Hello and welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Judy and I love travel, history, and getting to know how people live and what makes them tick. One of those things is their music and how and where they choose to enjoy it. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of the Palace of Catalan music, built specifically for the Orpheus Chamber Choir in Barcelona. In 1904, the choir turned to Catalan architect Lluis Domenech I Montaner to design their new home. His charge was to design a home where Catalan music and identity could not only flourish but be showcased. We will visit the concert hall, which has the distinction of being the only such venue to earn UNESCO World Heritage status. Some critics, especially fairly recently, thought that its Art Nouveau-flavored style was a bit eccentric, but I thought it was beautiful. So take a look at this feast for the eyes today with me, the Armchair Traveler. Concert halls are mostly about sound. At the beginning of the 20th century, America busied itself converting existing concert venues into movie palaces. At first, the entire sound issue was ignored for the very good reason that these were silent films. Fortunately, the acoustics could just sit there, waiting to be recalled to active duty when the time came. Later built venues, especially those in the last 50 years or so, frequently suffer from truly lousy acoustics. Once the listening public gets an earful, the shouting generally begins. Repairing the problems can be an expensive proposition, and some venues, notably the Sydney Opera House, struggle with the problem for decades. I really like music. I am one credit short of an Associate of Arts degree in music, and was a dedicated concert goer when I was younger. I still make a point of attending at least one concert in every city I visit. Venues vary. Some of the very best, at least in France, are in enormous cathedrals. It might seem odd, but the acoustics in these buildings are unbelievably good. This is a direct consequence of the fact that when the buildings were pitched up, there was no such thing as a microphone or a sound system. For the priest to be heard in the back of the house, the sound needed to carry. So what about the Palace of Catalan music? This hall is said to have excellent acoustics. It was built expressly to house performances of a chamber group. Acoustics were going to matter, and I think the architect knew it. Unfortunately, I was unable to get a ticket to a performance, to anything in either of my two visits to the city, so my report on the acoustics is secondhand hearsay. Opinions vary, but most people seem to think that they are excellent here. I have read complaints that the stained glass windows, which I'll show you later, rattle. The choir selected a popular and respected architect to bring their new home to life. Lluis Domenech I Montaner was more than an architect. He was a historian, a humanist, and a politician. He trained as an architect in Madrid, then made the grand tour to France, Switzerland, Italy, Germany, and Austria. He would have known not just all the historical styles, but was current with design trends. He was a near contemporary of Antoni Gaudi, and each pursued the idea of Catalan modernism. The results are strikingly different. Lluis modified the style, sticking recognizably close to the Art Nouveau progenitors, but added in ideas from his Muslim heritage: wide open spaces, more windows, arches, figures from nature, mixed figures, mosaic tile decorations, flowers, and plants. Gaudi's work is actually spare and restrained in comparison. Art Nouveau began to fade from design consciousness with the beginning of World War I in favor of the sleeker Art Deco. I think we're probably lucky that no one took it into his or her head to tear this building down and plant something more modern in its place. Certainly UNESCO thought so. The Music Palace is unique in another way. It's the only non-church music venue I've ever been in which has stained glass. The concert hall, which we'll visit in a few minutes, would be also naturally lit through those windows during daytime performances. Lluis had interests aside from architecture. He played a careful and somewhat understated role in the political side of the Catalan autonomy movement, and even served as a parliamentarian for the region for a while, promoting the restoration of Catalan autonomy. In his later years, he grew ill. Stomach cancer is the best guess, and became disillusioned with politics. He shifted his focus more to history and heraldry, perhaps because those were things that could be done at home. His last will specified that he was to be buried in the family vault in a town called Canet de Mar, a beach community quite close to Barcelona, and one chock full of Catalan modern architecture design, including his. Unfortunately, that was not to be. By then, late 1923, Spain was under control of a dictator named Primo de Rivera. The last thing Primo would have tolerated would have been the celebration of anyone who might have opposed his rule. He banned Luis's desired funeral interment. Lluis Domenech I Montaner was buried in a niche in the cemetery of Sant Gervasi here in Barcelona, where he remains to this day. To appreciate the building, you have to avert your eyes from the modern wing, sometimes called the Little Palace. I have to give the 21st century architects who put this thing up a lot of credit. They built it in a way that it fit, was functional, served a great purpose, and was clearly not part of the original design. When you walk up to the building, you first see the original entrance tucked between two large pillars. The small window that you see in this pillar was the original ticket office. Notice the entryway itself. The revolving doors you see here were designed specifically to keep the weather out. I don't know and haven't been able to find out when those doors came into use, or were they installed when air conditioning became more common. Because of the way the hall is situated, it's very difficult to get a full view with a camera. This is a view of the balcony, seen from ground level. To say it is rich in decoration and detail does not give it its full due. Curves and flowing lines, intended to mimic things like vines, insect wings, and flower stalks, are all hallmarks of Art Nouveau design. Catalan Modern took these ideas a bit further, harking back to the days of Muslim rule, when images of people were forbidden, but flowers and nature was embraced, so you can see plenty of florals in the mix as well. These artists embrace modern construction design and materials like steel, iron, glass, and ceramics. You'll see ceramics all over this building, sometimes in the form of tiles. The driving force behind all of this was to use modern materials and ideas, but to still give value to craftsmanship. The last part of the exterior design I'm going to show you is a figure of Jordi, the Catalan version of St. George. Inside and out, nearly every surface here is decorated one way or another. Catalan modern architects really did go all the way, using form as a part of function. What you see here is a stairwell that leads to the upper tier of the main theater. Notice the detail in the stair handle. Those amber-colored uprights are transparent and provide a place for additional lighting. I showed you a bit of the balcony from ground level, but it is far more impressive once you get upstairs. In the early 1900s, as much as today, and probably more considering the air conditioning had yet to have much of an effect on concert experiences, balconies weren't just decorative. They were a functional necessity. I showed you the balcony from the outside and downstairs, but the inside is really impressive. This stained glass wall actually divides the balcony into an inner and an outer area, and would have been useful in the wintertime to at least partially close off the inner area from the cold weather. Mosaics, as I mentioned, were commonly used in Catalan Art Nouveau styles. Antoni Gaudí was especially fond of them as a way to recycle and reuse otherwise damaged decorative tiles which otherwise might have gone to the dump heap. Was he merely being ecologically conscious, economically conscious? I think most might have been true. Unlike those steps we saw earlier, the columns here are mostly tiled rather than bare, and topped with gorgeous flowers in lieu perhaps of Corinthian columns. Turning around and looking in the other direction shows more tiles in an area which would not be visible from the street. When modern Catalan artists decorated, they went whole hog. This venue actually has two halls, one smaller and quite spare, which is used, I think, mostly as a rehearsal area, and is where they conduct lectures prior to the public tours. What you see here is the main hall. I admit I climbed up and down and all over and probably made an awful nuisance of myself trying to see everything. I'm pretty sure I missed as much as I caught. Medieval, Gothic, and later cathedrals are sometimes famous for their stained glass, and I think these examples are where they got the idea to put stained glass in a music hall, which is actually quite unusual in my experience. Everything in the building is decorated, but the real eye-catcher is probably the skylight you see here over the hall. Even the small side skylights, no one would be much likely to check them out, were made of stained glass. This view of the stained glass was taken from the top of the nosebleed section. Even the cheap seats apparently deserved a view. The stage backdrop you see here is curved with pipes allowing for the organ, shown in this image on the stage, placed above it. This makes the stage rather unwieldy and probably unusable for most productions that require backdrops, but keep in mind the venue was designed as a concert hall, not for plays. The stage backdrop is decorated with flowers and 18 women representing muses. Rather than representing all of the arts, each of the figures is shown playing musical instruments, including strings, violins, cellos, and harps, wind instruments like flutes, trumpets, and possibly clarinets, and percussion instruments, including drums and tambourines. The way the women are represented is quite unusual. Notice in this detail photo that the musics in their instruments burst forth from the walls. You can see this in the percussion area of the representation. The bottom parts of their figures were, however, worked in mosaic tiles. When the architects added on the little palace, they massively reworked the cafe and public area. The cafe boasted both indoor and outdoor seating. The outdoor area had some awnings and seemed quite pleasant and popular, but wasn't exactly in tune with the rest of the building. I suspect this was a design choice. I mentioned in the beginning that when this addition was built, the architects wanted it to blend, but definitely not to match. I had time to kill before my tour, so I had a cup of coffee and a goodie. Since I had already tried the cafe, I decided I wanted something quite different for my lunch, so I moved on, and so shall we. Thank you for joining me for this in-depth tour of one of Barcelona's Catalan modern gems. Come back next time for another adventure with me, the Armchair Traveler, as your guide.